right, welcome into KC Sports Tonight. Marleah Campbell here with Gabe Swartz. A lot to talk about today. I'm excited because I wish it was October. We're going to talk about October in a second. August 20th, and we're going to start with the Royals before we get to the Chiefs because the Royals are very much on their way to a critical time of year here. Big game tonight leading into an even bigger series coming up at the end of the week. Gabe, you actually came into the sports office today and pointed out that the Royals are 3.5 wins shy of the best record of baseball, which is wild, coming off of a 106 loss season last year, tying franchise worst season record-wise. They are also 4.5 games above Boston for the final wild card spot and 2.5 games behind the lead in the AL Central. Mm-hmm. So not a bad time of year to be a Royals fan.
Yeah. I mean, it is truly unprecedented, the levels of parity that there are in the MLB this season. Aside from the White Sox at 95 losses, there's no outlier records, really.
Yeah.
Nobody has more than 74 wins, and that's the big bad Dodgers. And so to say that the Royals are at 70 wins for the first time since 2021 is impressive, considering how uncompetitive they were for the first 3.5 months of last season. It's noteworthy. So there's been a lot of juice back into the baseball fever of Kansas City, and it's been good to see. But also, it feels, I guess we're going to get into it here with how we feel about down the stretch, how the Royals should do, and whether expectations maybe should or should not change for this team, because I think that this team is a pretty good litmus test of, are you a glass half full or a glass half empty person? Because I think there's things that you could want to see improvements on, and then at the same time there's an AL MVP candidate and 3 of the top 10 RBI guys in the league, along with a guy who's tied for the MLB lead in wins. So there's a lot of good to go with it, and it truly, whether you are focusing on, it's nothing but sunshine and rainbows and all the good things, if you're a glass half full person, and if you're a glass half empty person, you're like, man, if the bullpen was just a little bit better, they'd probably be the best team in baseball right now. So I think it's truly just a matter of perspective.
You mentioned the White Sox, a slim 43 games out of first in the AL Central.
They've got the E next to their names in the standings now.
Yeah,
so
brutal. Okay, so big game for yesterday for Seth Lugo, bouncing back from kind of a pair of not so great outings, but got on the back on the right foot yesterday. We talk about this team being 4.5 games ahead of Boston. That feels like a little bit of a cushion. For a while there, it was kind of going back and forth. The wins and losses were going back and forth. I was in the clubhouse yesterday, and we were talking to JJ Piccolo, the team's GM, about like, hey, do you check the score? Do you check your phone to see how the Twins and the Guardians are doing? And he was like, yeah, like first I make sure that we get the win, and then the next thing I'm doing, it's that time of year. He said after August 1st, you're checking to see, all right, where are we standing? How are things going? Because as you have mentioned, the parity is just ridiculous. I mean, 3.5 games out of first place, they're closer to being in first than they are their lead over the Red Sox for the wild card spot. It's just wild.
But, and still, with all that being said, it's like they're still at a 77% win or playoff probability odds. So it's anything from a lock. But it's good that they have the 4.5 game cushion on Boston, because 20 of their next 22 games are against teams that would currently be in the playoffs. So got to take care of this series with the Angels, get one of the last two to win the series, and ideally you would think with what you're sending to the mound tonight and Reagan's getting both of those games today and tomorrow is a possibility. And odds-wise, you're going to be favored to win both games. I know that's not how baseball works every day, but continuing to build that cushion. They've not been better than 15 games above 500, which is what they currently are at 70 and 55 this season. I think the last was when they were 34 and 19, and then they kind of plateaued a little bit. And as me and Jared were talking about this last night as they wrapped up the game of just once they got to 34 and 19 and it got back to, I think it got to like 34 and 23 or something along those lines, if you had said to me they're going to get back to 15 games above 500, I would not have believed you, because it just kind of felt like they were kind of evening out from how hot they started in April and May. And to their credit, they've won the games that they've needed to. They've beaten a lot of the bad teams that they need to, and they've done well enough avoiding sweeps against great teams when they've not played their best baseball. They've been one of the best teams in baseball at home, and that's really what has carried them. And just they, as you and Jared talked about last night, they had probably their best series of the year in Cincinnati, top to bottom, of offense clicking, defense doing well, and the pitching being great. So they're playing really good ball at the right time, and considering how injured the Twins are and how much Cleveland has kind of stumbled as of late, as they've overly relied on their bullpen all year long, the division is absolutely up for grabs.
Yeah, it really is theirs for the taking. As you mentioned, though, tough stretch coming up here. They have the fourth hardest remaining schedule left in baseball, so a good time to prove that you can walk the walk, you can beat the best teams. I think that's the formula for any team, is to be able to take care of business against teams you should beat, hopefully split against teams better than you, and kind of stay somewhere in the middle. So big stretch coming up. Philly's coming to town on Friday. That is going to be massive. We're both going to be out there. Very excited for that. So on this, we kind of wanted to separate this a little bit, talk about the success that the Royals have had so far, but also get to, you posed a really good question when we were just kind of chatting in the sports office. What would it take for you to consider this season a success for the Royals? You alluded to the glass half full thing. That doesn't bode well for me, because I know my answer, but I'll let you start.
Well, I just think that for a lot of nights it has felt like they've at times given games away with their bullpen, and I've tried to avoid being the super glass half empty person of man, what could be if they just had like Lucas Urseg throughout the year for all of those high leverage spots where it feels like the last 2 weeks, anytime he's come in, it's just been 98 on the corner and right by guys all day long, and that's been really good to see. But they didn't have that throughout the year, and so they've had the ups and downs of James MacArthur being good and James MacArthur not being great, and then Will Smith starting poorly, but then really putting it together over the year. And John Schreiber had a great April and May and was not good in June and July, got hurt at the end of July. I think truly missing the playoffs at this point, you would not feel good about. And that's a testament to how well they've played, is that they've completely reshaped what would be a success for the season on August 20th. They're 4 games away from hitting their preseason win total projections from Vegas odds makers. So
37 games.
The fact that they have over a month of baseball left to play, and if they do what they're supposed to this week against LA and get a game or two against the Phillies, there's a chance by the end of this weekend they are surpassing the season-long expectations of productivity from what the odds makers said. And that I would not have. I would have said 100 different things would have happened this season, preseason, before that. So I think that's the difference. But it's not. I don't think you're at the point where expecting a playoff series win or expecting a deep playoff run is what the mentality should shift to. It really should truly just be get in and see what happens once you're there. And I've been saying, I feel like a broken record, like every time I'm on the show and we talk about what should we think about things.
Cuts, so it's gonna get much worse.
I just think that I continue to harp on the fact that last year 2 wild card teams made the World Series, and the whole format of the baseball playoffs, it feels like every year there's a 90-100 win team of the Dodgers and the Yankees, and then they bow out in the first round. This year there's probably not going to be that. There's not going to be a lot of teams that get much past 90 wins, and it's almost certain that nobody's touching 100 wins. So it truly is going to be one of those crazy Octobers where anybody could do it. So you just need to get in and give yourself a chance.
Yeah, it was fun, again, being in the clubhouse yesterday, talking to Salvador Perez about getting back to the playoffs potentially being well on their way to do so. You mentioned odds makers have it around 80% chances. And it was cool seeing him light up and talking about, getting back there, because he was obviously a part of that historic run 2014, 2015, and then has been grinding along every season since. So, but, something else you mentioned when we're talking about the dichotomy between last season and this season, last year the Royals were eliminated from playoff contention August 29th. They were the second team to get eliminated, second to the A's, so not great company. So when we talk about expectations for the season and what would be considered a success, in the off season I would have said, like, just do better than this past season, like show any sign of growth, pick up 20 more wins or 10 more wins. I mean, just anything to kind of give this fan base and this city a sign that you're moving in the right direction. Because last year, you could kind of justify it with I think the term constantly was, it's an evaluation year. We're looking at the guys we have. Well, you can't have several of those. You have to start putting the building blocks together. I don't think anyone foresaw it coming together this quickly. The front office did spend a ton of money this offseason, so that certainly kind of lended a hand to thinking, okay, well, maybe this could be better than we thought. But at this point in the season, I think you redefine those expectations. I do think it's disappointing if they, really tank it from here and miss the playoffs. I think your new expectation is there are no moral victories in baseball. Certainly they could lose out, and it was already a way better game or season than last year. But getting there, I think, is your kind of bar of the season. As you mentioned, anything from there is just kind of gravy on top. But yeah, fun time to be part of this fan base. And again, props to the ownership for identifying young talent, turning it around some quickly, bringing in guys, the pitchers they brought in this offseason, what they did at the trade deadline to elevate the roster even more. Because this is kind of, the formula seems to be finally clicking and adding up.
Yeah.
And shows if I don't know if last year we had a lot of signs pointing to, like, well, if you trust the process, this will come together. Like, there wasn't a lot of indication that was the trajectory this club was going, but certainly where we are now. So
yeah, it felt like the last 3 months of the season last year were just like, man, Bobby Witt is pretty incredible, and everything else around it is pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But now he's been more incredible, and everybody else around him has really elevated their game.
Yeah, he has
great.
The supporting cast to back him,
Yep.
for sure. Speaking of supporting cast, we are not going to see, we'll get to both of these topics, we're not going to see the Chiefs starters on Thursday, predictably. Andy Reid hasn't played the starters in the preseason finale since, I think, 2016, 2017, so it's been a long time. This was predicted. We are officially 1 week away from this team having to cut their roster from 91, where they are right now, to 53. I think we're going to see some surprises, and that's a big one on the bottom right there. I thought this was huge. So
yeah, I was shocked when I heard that today. I mean, I know that Nico, if you're just listening to the podcast version of this, Dave Tobe said that he was going to be pounding the table for Nico Remigio to make the roster as a kickoff return guy. And yeah, like, he had a 45-yard return on Saturday.
Yeah.
It was a really good one. But for him to, knowing that Dave Tobe is one of those core guys that's been with Andy Reid for a decade plus now.
Yeah.
And he is putting out public, like, because he could have just done this in private and probably gotten Nico on the roster.
And that's what I would have expected. This isn't necessarily a coaching staff that, shows the cards
exactly
too often.
So that makes me, and just knowing how much important, I keep thinking the kickoff rules are going to be significantly different in the regular season. Like, I think teams are kicking the ball into the end zone and letting guys return it just through the air. But I think once the regular season gets going and it becomes trying to get the ball on the ground and skipping as quickly as possible, having someone who's nimble, athletic, and kind of shifty is going to be huge. And Nico's been really good at doing it in the preseason. So I think they're going to need to put an emphasis on that position, and if they're proven wrong and the kickoff rules are not as big of a deal as previously expected, I guess they could adjust. But I think it's good process to go into the season valuing that position, having your special teams coordinator pounding the table for a guy and giving him that spot. And if it doesn't work out, or if plans change, they change. But now my expectation is absolutely that Nico's going to be on the roster, and that means I think that there's absolutely going to be 7 wide receivers on the roster too.
Great news for Nico Remigio. Not great news for Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. If you want to throw Cornell Powell in that conversation, although I don't think he was necessarily on the bubble. But I was really surprised hearing this, just because I think this is the first. I don't think we've heard any of the assistant coaches kind of tout a guy that was on the bubble and say publicly, like, I want this guy on the roster. Remigio is one of the best returners in college football. He's had a couple of really nice returns in the preseason. So, again, good news for him. I think I agree with you. I think that certainly indicates that the Chiefs will keep 7 receivers. They kept 7 last year. That was the first time in the Andy Reid era that they did that. You don't go 5 core receivers and then Remigio. So you stick with 6 core guys and then add Nico in there.
And there's a decent chance that an 8th is playing that first game, because Marquise Brown is probably
Hollywood's questionable
up in the air in terms of whether he plays or not. So I think that I think that at this point you're the Kadarius Toney stuff is bleak. I think Sky Moore is going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
He's also another one of those guys where he's shown some flashes in the return game, whether it was 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game with a huge punt return, or whether it was in the preseason on Saturday. He had a good one as well.
So I can't remember if it was you and me or Jared and I talking about this, but we kind of talked about, of the 9 receivers who are likely to make the roster, who are the 2 that you see getting cut? And I had it between Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Nico Remigio. So again, bad news for Sky and Kadarius. I think you're right. I think they trust Sky a little bit more. Kadarius certainly did not do himself any favors with the, getting double flagged on his first preseason snap and then proceeding to not do much. He'll play on Thursday. But at this point, I think it's going to be like he has to show some kind of sign that the Chiefs should keep him, and I think it might be too late. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo brought this up in the presser today. He said, some guy, and he of course was talking about the defense, but he said, some guys had some really nice plays, but the Lions didn't play any other starters. So great, you did this against their, third string running back. No offense to whoever the third string running back is for the Lions, but what are you going to do for us September 5th against the Ravens starters? So he said that kind of lends us to caution on the side of go with guys with experience, go with guys that we trust. None of those things define Kadarius Toney. And again, I just don't know if there's anything he can prove at this point that he hasn't had the opportunity to do already.
I mean, if because that's the thing, is if you're not going to trust a lot of what we're seeing or what the general public is seeing during preseason games, and you're going to trust what you're seeing in the facility and at practice, well, the one thing, obviously there's not as much of a viewing period or any viewing period for people now that they're back in Kansas City, but when they're in St. Joseph and you can watch practices and such, one of the common themes was that Kadarius Toney was either not participating or not getting reps.
Yeah.
So
he was with the running backs for a while too.
If that's what they're looking at, if that's what they're valuing, it's tougher to envision any future for him.
Yeah, doesn't bode well. Going to be a big game for some guys on Thursday. Again, I don't know if any major decisions are going to be made Thursday, even with a spectacular performance from someone on the bubble. But
I think it's practice squad delineations of who they want to prioritize, and if anybody showed, I think Amir Smith-Marset really showed out in the second or third preseason game last year, and then immediately got traded.
Right.
And that's something that Veach would be open to, of when you're one of these teams where when you draft well and you have good young talent, being able to trade people at the end of preseason is a good sign of how strong your roster is. Yeah. So if they have that opportunity, I think they'll take it.
Yeah, it's your last opportunity to get stuff on tape. Trent McDuffie told us yesterday, he was like, we're focused on the Ravens. I mean, the starters have moved on. So it should be a lot of fun to get this one in the rearview mirror. I'm just itching to get to September 5th.
Yeah.
But, Trent McDuffie also had a good point, which is, some of these guys this is going to be their last game of professional football, so enjoy where you're at. You made it to the NFL. You can always say you wore a Chiefs uniform. So again, it'll still be a fun one to watch. But as far as like, oh man, if Kadarius Toney doesn't do X, Y, Z, we're not there. I don't think the repercussions of Thursday are going to be felt that much. But Gabe, before we move on to kind of our final topic, we're 7 days away from the roster cut deadline. Got a couple workouts left, maybe. Any last pressing takes, guys, that you're thinking maybe like widespread wise, this guy is considered on the bubble? I think he's a lock. Any of those guys?
I really just think that like the overall takeaway in terms of when you're figuring out who stays and who goes is like they're going to end up. I think it's pretty likely at this point, given how much weaker the running back room and how much of a question mark it is versus the tight end room of knowing what you have in Kelsey and Gray. I just think that it's likely that Carson Steele has taken Irv Smith's spot.
Yep.
So don't be surprised if they just go in with 3 tight ends because they gave Carson Steele a 53-man roster spot.
Yep, I'd echo that. I thought he was 80% secured after the Jacksonville game. I think he's 100% secured after this last preseason game. He was getting first-team snaps.
Yeah.
I think Andy Reid liked what he saw going against, Detroit's 1.5 twos.
He'll always be a part of the first behind-the-back play. So
yeah,
he was on the field for that play.
Yeah,
so.
That is going to be replayed so many times too. So, okay, let's move on to our final topic of the day. Big news for Jayhawk fans. And it's actually not really the big news is that the starting quarterback is going to start against Lindenwood. I say big news because Jalen Daniels has obviously had some serious injury issues over the past couple seasons between his shoulder and his back. You can see the stat there. He missed 10 of 13 games in 2023. Missed a lot, if not most, of the prior season.
Yeah, I think it was at least half the games.
Half. Played the first. Because after 5 or 6 games is when he was really in the Heisman conversation, which is crazy. And then he got hurt, and things kind of went downhill from there. But for him individually, Jason Bean stepped up and played really well. But big news for the Jayhawks. Gabe, your thoughts on their upcoming season with Daniels at the head? And do you think this is impossible to predict, but do you think this is the year we see what Jalen Daniels is capable of?
I hope so.
Yeah.
He's one of the most fun players in college football to watch when he's healthy, and that's one of those things where it's truly been plaguing him. It plagued even Jason Bean, whether he could stay healthy or not was tough for KU.
We saw Ballard in last season against K-State.
We got 2 games at Cole Ballard, so I think that it's intriguing of if he can stay healthy or not. I think that the playing style of keeping him healthy is interesting because with Jeff Grimes is the new OC instead of Andy Kotelnicki with him off to Penn State. I don't think Baylor ran the ball with their quarterback nearly as much, and that's where Jeff Grimes was previously. I know that they were pretty sporadic because Grimes was the OC at BYU when Zach Wilson was there and had that great COVID season when that was a little weird, a little fluky, a little fraudy, but I don't know how much they're going to try to run him, and I specifically don't think that they're going to run him much, if at all, against Lindenwood. I think it's going to be a lot of hand that thing off to Devin Neal, hand that thing off to Daniel Highshaw, or quick passes, get it out to all of the returning production from last year's team. And that's the smart way of making sure that his back injury that has plagued him does not flare up. So as somebody with frequent back spasms, I will say I feel bad for Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
I've also never tried to play Division I
football
with that problem plaguing me, so I can't imagine what he's going through. But for the good of college football, I'm hoping that we get a healthy season of number 6 in Lawrence / Casey Mo this year, and then number 5 in Manhattan.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. You just mentioned that. I feel like every time I talk KU football, I am like excited about the fact that it's going to be in Kansas City because I forget. Going to be playing at Children's Mercy Park in Arrowhead this season, so that should be a lot of fun. Man, college football in general, we got all 3 local Power 5s in the top 25 for the first time ever. I think you looked that up, right?
For the first time ever preseason, all 3 of them.
Okay, yeah. So expectations have literally never been higher. Going to be a lot of fun. We have Mizzou Media Day today and KU Media Day today, so you will hear from both those teams tonight at 10. Coming up at 6, we're going to hear from Steve Spagnuolo and a little more on the Royals. Salvador Perez, JJ Piccolo talking about postseason expectations. And that'll do it for today. Gabe, thank you so much for your time, for your insight as always.
Awesome.
And we'll see you back here, I'm sure, soon.